think one of the main things that I noticed in the last 3 days was the diversity of the work we saw, which was, particularly in the documentary category, was really welcome. So we didn't get a lot of just, a stream of classical black and white documentary work. We saw really a broad spectrum of approaches to social issues. So that was really great to see, that people were thinking beyond this sort of narrow definition of what it means to document those types of issues. And that applied to the art category too, but that wasn't quite such a surprise, because we're used to seeing lots of different approaches from artists. So yeah, that was one observation. I think the other thing that we all noticed was that out of all the issues that we saw documented, the majority or the largest number came from the Rohingya crisis in Rakhine State, and that it shouldn't be a surprise because of the sort of the gravity and the size of the humanitarian crisis. But what was a surprise was our reaction to it, in that there wasn't anything particularly that stood out as a really compelling and interesting body of work. And in fact, a lot of what we saw seemed to be shot almost with a checklist of what the editor back at the publication would be looking for, and could have been replicated across multiple humanitarian crises for decades. And that was disappointing to see, because there are many ways to approach the visualization and the picturing and documentation of these issues, and that wasn't reflected on that particular issue. Now it might be, you could argue that maybe it's too early because it's still relatively fresh, but I don't think that's a sort of a good enough reason. So it was disappointing because we saw work after work on the same issue, and it wasn't really adding anything to it. Yeah, so it was very interesting to sit in a room with a set of people who are immersed in photography in different ways and come at it professionally from different points of view, and have to then look at a selection of work which has been volunteered to us, and then decide on which is the best. And of course there's always an element of subjectivity there, so you're going to get debates about what is important to me from my subjective point of view, but also from my professional point of view and how I look at photography. So that was very interesting because you learn a lot from your fellow jurors, which is great because often we can be very blinkered and narrow and focused for very good reasons. And so to sit in a room with people who are coming from different directions, I felt that I learned a lot over the last 3 days. And it brings up a whole load of issues which some of the things that you're really exercised by and energized by, and you get to actually debate it with people who may have similar views, and you sort of it's cathartic, and some who some way you disagree. And to see a look at what the role of photography is, what photography is and what is the point of it. And that, again, when you have a diverse body of work in front of you, how do I compare this particular piece of work, which is shot in this particular way by this type of person, with this one? So for example, you look at an approach to climate change, which is very different to maybe another body of work which is much more direct, but on a different issue. And so you're sort of like circling and throwing in sort of ideas and debates and points of view, and seeing what sort of comes out of that. And it's not always clear, but somehow it's always like it felt like we were sifting like earth, and slowly somehow through these discussions and debates, we came to this fine point which we all agreed on. And it really did feel like that. I couldn't tell you at a point where maybe one piece, gained ground over another. It was just like a sifting for me. And yet at the end, we came to agreements and made selections, which was great. I think the thing that stands out for me about the finalists is these are really solid pieces of work. Yeah, I mean, you can feel the weight, the amount of thought, and the amount of work that has gone into producing them. Yeah, these are not light, pieces which were done, in a short space of time and haven't been thought through. I mean, they didn't get to be the winners, without that. And I think you can feel that. You just look at the images, and you can feel that, that weight to them. And yeah, that if I was to characterize it in one sentence, say that each of those winners has a real solid weight.